Hi, and welcome to Katrina's Creations. This is the Wednesday episode, and I mentioned on Saturday I had no idea what today's topic was going to be, but I came up with an idea, and you all know I'm always looking for a bargain. I shop the clearance racks, I look for the closeouts. My son jokingly says, if you can't find me, look in the clearance section because it attracts me like a bug to a light. And it's true. It's pretty cheap is pretty much plastered on my forehead. So I thought I would use today as a chance to kind of talk about different ways to make things and add to your craft supplies without spending a small fortune. I'm on a budget, and I know lots of you are too, and while it's nice to have the nice, good quality, expensive things, it isn't necessary to have expensive things to create something beautiful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First topic is going to be DIY shawl pins. Now we all see those gorgeous shawl pins, and they can be pricey. I've looked at them myself. There is a couple of options. I ordered one the other day. It has not come in yet, so when it does, I will show it to you. But if you remember the hair barrettes that were pretty much a lacy kind of wood or wire design, and then they have a pin that goes through it, you hook your hair with it? That's the same concept that a lot of your shawl pins are, so I actually bought one of those off of eBay for $2. And I'm going to give it a try. There's no reason why it should not work as a shawl pin, and if it doesn't work as a shawl pin, it will work in my hair. So, but I'm pretty sure it will work as a shawl pin. Other ideas for shawl pins, just a plain old brooch. You can still use this and pin your work together. The only advice I would give with using something like that, make sure it's not a heavy shawl pin. This was one that was my grandmother's. It's just costume jewelry. It doesn't weigh a whole lot. The reason I say not to have something too big or bulky or heavy is because it can pull your stitches just from the weight of it, and you don't want to stretch anything out of shape. So as long as it's a lightweight pin, it will work. Now here is my own little idea and creation. This is a stitch holder for knitting. You can buy them for under $1. Usually there's several in a pack for under $1. Or you can use a coupon with like Hobby Lobby or Joann's Fabrics. They sell these all the time. They're pretty cheap. I picked a silver one. And then I went over to the jewelry department in the craft section. And I picked up these beads. Now these are the beads that have the bigger hole. The little ones, of course, aren't going to work, so you have to have the type that have the bigger hole. And all I did was I opened this up, and I'm not going to do this because I'll never get it bent back in shape. But I pretty much just opened this stitch holder all the way up, open, slid the beads on in the order that I wanted them, and folded it back shut. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to come off. And I just use it like a giant safety pin and loop it through this way on my shawls. It works great, and all total I spent under maybe $5 or $6 for it. I think the beads were the most expensive thing, and knowing me, I probably had a coupon, so I'd say probably $5 or less for this. So that is my shawl pin idea. Now let's talk project bags. Project bags are really cute. They have some adorable ones out there, but they can be pricey. Now I do have 3 high quality project bags, but I didn't pay for any of them. I won them in giveaways. So let me show you what they are first. This is from Birdie and Poppet. It's, I believe, has some quilt batting in between it because there's something puffy in between. And this is what the inside looks like. Birdie and Poppet is a company in the UK, in Nottingham, comes from Nottingham, UK. I won this on the Yarn and You Girl podcast, and it's a drawstring, which are my favorite, actually, the drawstrings, because I find the zipper project bags, sometimes I get the yarn caught in the zipper. I've had that happen numerous times. So drawstrings are my favorites. This one I won from the podcast Must Love Yarn. They sent this little pin with it. And actually, the one lady that's on the podcast, her mother makes these. And it has a pocket here. And the inside is just pretty much plain. But the whole idea with this style, and this is similar to the one Charlene crocheted the other week, where you can wear this on your arm and your yarn goes in here, so you can be knitting and your yarn stays in there at the same time. You could do the same idea with a drawstring bag too. You could just put your yarn in and just close it partially so the ball doesn't come bouncing out, and wear it on your arm and knit or crochet right from there. Now those are more expensive ones. On average, your project bags, if they are handmade, because they are coming from someone as a cottage industry, they're not mass produced, they're made in someone's home, and there's expenses. I know I have an Etsy shop and I've sold on eBay and things. A lot of times there are fees involved, so that's why some of the prices are higher, because they have to handle, there's no middleman, they have to handle all of those fees. So project bags can run on average $25 and up, depending on the size and what is incorporated into the bag. But there's other alternatives to using expensive bags. So I thought I would show you a couple that I've used. This was a free giveaway. I'll turn this around so you don't see where it came from. But, no, we're okay. I can show it to you. It does not have a name. This was given to me at an event that I worked at. It is a drawstring. It's actually meant to be a drawstring, and you can use it as a backpack. You know, there's that like a knapsack. So these go over your arms. I'm not doing that. But anyway, you can use it as that, and it also has a handle. This is just nylon. I have two of these. One is blue and one is orange. And they work fine for a project bag. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it's big enough to hold more than just socks. You could handle a shawl. This would probably not hold a sweater, but you could hold a shawl in it. So look for giveaways. A lot of times when you go to events, they give you things like that, and that's where that one came from. Also, when you buy things, a lot of times, they come in plastic bags with drawstrings. These are some, in fact, there's two of them in here, that I have saved and set aside because they're ideal for storing sweater quantities or Afghan quantities of yarn. So it has drawstring, so I can put everything I'm working on in and just pull it shut. Actually, this is from when I had surgery. I saved it. So as you can see, because it says personal belongings. So this is from when I had surgery. So save those little bags. And here's the simplest one, and this is what I store my projects in when I'm not working on them. I go to the dollar store, the Dollar Tree, and I buy 1 gallon Ziploc bags. I think there's 15 to a box for $1. And when I decide I've got a group of yarn that I want to put together for a project, even if I don't know what the project is ahead of time, I'm not going to get to it right away, but I want that yarn set aside so I don't accidentally use it for something else. I have it stuffed in plastic bags. It protects it from insects and moths, you know, things like that. I guess a moth is an insect, but it protects it from all of those nasty little things that will ruin your yarn. But it also keeps it together so that it's easy enough to, you know, find it when you want it, and so you don't accidentally grab one of the skeins that you already had earmarked for another project. So those are project bag ideas. Anything will work as a project bag, even if it's just a plain plastic grocery bag. You know, anything that protects your yarn and makes it easy for you to carry around there's nothing wrong with that. It works perfect, and I do it all the time. I've even stored some of my yarn in a margarine tub. This is not the particular margarine tub, but I have a margarine tub that has a lid, and I cut a hole in the lid, and then I just made sure that the hole was smooth so the yarn wasn't going to get snagged. And I put my yarn inside it, threaded the yarn through the hole, and it's not going to go rolling around anywhere. it's the same thing as the more expensive yarn bowl holders that you buy in the stores. And I bought the margarine anyway, so, I already got the great big tub. So it works perfect for that too, and I've taken this with me on vacation before, so I could sit it on the floor of the car, and I don't have to worry about my yarn getting dirty. It's going to stay contained. So look for other options other than the pricey stuff. Now we're going to talk about hand-dyed yarns. Now, there is a difference between hand-dyed yarn and yarn that is dyed by a company. It's more labor-intensive. Again, just like your project bags, someone is doing this as a cottage industry in their home. So it's an independent dyer. They're not part of a company. They have, it's an operation in their kitchen so many times. So there's usually an expense involved because they can buy in bulk, but they can't buy in the huge amounts of bulk that a company can buy in. So hand-dyed yarn from an independent dyer will run at least $25 a skein, possibly more. So I'm not going to be making a sweater's quantity out of that, especially for my size, where I'm going to need quite a few skeins of yarn. Even if you were a small person and you needed 3 skeins of yarn to make a fingering weight sweater, that's $75 for a sweater. I'd be afraid to wear it if I spent that much money on it. So here are some options that I thought I would share with you. This is yarn, this speckled right here. This is my basket wave shawl, and the colored yarn that is here is hand-dyed by a local dyer. The skein of yarn was $28. I only used about half of it. I do have half of this skein left, and I have this blue left. The trick with hand-dyed yarn, because it is fun to buy things that are unique, and it's also fun to be able to support somebody who is trying to get a business started, but you can't afford to do an entire project out of it, is pick one skein and then supplement it by cheaper yarns. So this yarn that this is done with is Cloudborne Sock Twist, which is from Bluprint, which is the old Craftsy. It's very, very reasonable. It's under $10 a skein, and which to some of you that still might sound pricey, but this isn't acrylic. This is a wool yarn. I believe, I'm not sure if it's merino or not, but they do sell merino. They also sell alpaca yarns as well in the Cloudborne brand. So they are natural fibers. So they are going to be more expensive than an acrylic, but they're not as expensive as buying them from a hand dyer. So this way I was able to create a nice shawl. I spent $14 worth because I only used, like I said, half of the skein of yarn. I used $14 from an independent dyer and probably maybe $10 worth of skein of the blue. So I was able to have something that's unique, that's high quality, that is all natural fibers, and it didn't cost me an arm and a leg to make it. So that is one option. Likewise, I do the same thing when I make sweaters. I am not going to use all yarn from an independent dyer for that. I made this sweater. This is the Cooper Spur pullover. This is from the Yarn and You Girl. The colored yarn, once again, is hand-dyed. This came in a knit crate box, but it was in a sock box, which was actually independent dyed. It was not dyed by Knit Crate. So it was I believe it was a merino yarn. It's, even though they dye in batches, it's still one of a kind because each batch of yarn will dye slightly different. So one skein compared to another skein might not look identical. But this other yarn, the maroon color yarn that I have here, I bought at a warehouse up in Rhode Island, and I think the entire cone of yarn, and I've still got a lot left, the entire cone of yarn I think was $8. It was $8 per 2 pounds, or $8 a pound. So maybe $16 total, and I've still got enough to make something maybe not another full sweater, but I still have quite a bit of the yarn left. So again, I have taken something that was a more expensive yarn, mixed it with something that was a little cheaper, and I still have something that's a nice quality that is in all natural materials because they are both wool. The only thing you do need to watch with doing things like this is that you match like with like. In other words, you're not going to want to put a cotton with a wool. You're not going to want to put an acrylic yarn with a cotton or a wool. You want to put like fibers. If it's wool, you want to put wool with it. If it is a superwash, which means you can, very carefully, but you can put it in the washing machine, you don't want to mix a superwash with a non-superwash because you're going to have to hand wash that then, unless you don't mind hand washing. I tend to hand wash all of mine because I always have this, even though it says I can wash it, I always have this panic in the back of my head. What happens if it shrinks? I accidentally shrunk cashmere one time. We don't want to do that again. So I tend to hand wash anything. But like I said, you want to mix the same fiber with the same fiber in order to do that. Now, you don't have to buy hand-dyed yarn or spend a small fortune to still have something look like it's hand-dyed. This is the Drachenfels shawl. The dark purple that is on this has alpaca in it. This I won in the same giveaway that I won from Must Love Yarn, the project bag. This came with it. But if you look closely, I have two other colors that are mixed in this. I have this color here, and then you'll see a gray speckled. Now you may look at this and think, that's hand-dyed, the gray speckled yarn. There you can see it a little bit more. You can see the speckles in it. And you may think that that is hand-dyed yarn. It's not. The fuchsia color here and the speckled yarn come from Knit Picks. It's Knit Picks Hawthorne speckled yarn. It's made to look like it's hand-dyed. In fact, I believe Knit Picks sells several different brands that are made to look like they are hand-dyed or hand-painted. You can get them for a third of the cost of what you're going to spend if it is actually hand-dyed. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's still a good quality yarn. I think they were $12 a skein. It's fingering weight, so there's a lot of yardage with fingering weight. 100 gram skein is usually over 400 yards with fingering or sock weight. So again, you can get something that is natural fibers. It can look like it is hand dyed, even though it's not. Another one to check out, like I said, the Cloudborn from Bluprint Yarns, or the Cloudborn from Bluprint. There are several different yarn fiber contents within that brand, are all very good. And Knit Picks has the palette yarn, which I use all the time. It's a fingering weight, and I have no idea how many different colors. You name it, they've got it in a different color. I would say there's probably close to 100. I could be even wrong. There might be even more than that. But there are tons of shades in it, and it's good quality yarn. It's wool. It's not hand dyed. It doesn't have speckles in it, but it is a natural fiber, and it is relatively soft. I call it a workhorse yarn because it's not pricey. It's usually between $3 and $4 a skein for a 50-gram ball. But it's one of those yarns that's very forgiving. I use it for my test knits all the time. So I'm not spending a lot of money, but I've got natural fiber, and if I make a mistake, I know I can rip it out and re-knit, and it's not going to show that it's been ripped out and re-knit. It holds up very well, is what I'm looking for to say. But Knit Picks, like I said, and Bluprint both have good quality yarns for a reasonable price, and they do have options that can look hand-dyed. So there's other ways around, other than spending the huge amounts for hand-dyed yarn. I do have some hand-dyed yarn in my stash. Most of it's from going to vacation. When we go on vacation, I tend to buy hand-dyed yarn that's local to that area, just so it's like my souvenir yarn. But otherwise, most of the majority of the yarns that I have are commercially produced yarns. So even though they're all natural fibers, they're a little bit cheaper than the hand-dyed stuff. But, they still look good. They hold up well. And acrylics hold up well, too. I don't want you to think I'm bashing acrylic yarns. I buy from Lion brand as well. I don't tend to buy from Red Heart. However, I do own Red Heart actually all of the baby blankets that I've made for my grandkids, because I knew they were going to be washed a lot, needed to be held up. I've used acrylic yarn. So, there's all kinds of fiber contents out there. There's lots of things to try. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg to produce something that's beautiful. I'm certainly not a yarn snob. Like I said, I own acrylic and I own all the way up to some yarns that are cashmere. So it all depends on the mood you're in and the price you want to pay. But just not to feel intimidated when you see all these people showing all these expensive yarns and expensive project bags and feeling like you have to have all those things. You don't. It's all about the crafting itself, the love that you put into a project, and the person you're making it for. Or if you're like me and you make it for yourself, so yeah. Anyway, that is today's podcast. Just a short little one on budgeting and still having fun. So thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I will see you on Saturday.